August of 2005, I realized the only thing I was clear about were the 5 best ways to kill myself. I had gotten completely lost. And that wake-up call was pretty shocking.
You became a coach to help people, but no one told you how to build the business behind it. Welcome to Coach as Entrepreneur, the show for coaches building real businesses with systems, strategy, and heart. Build the systems, serve your clients, and support your family. So a quick note before we dive in. The audio quality on this episode isn't what we normally put out, and this was actually supposed to be our very first episode, but I held it back hoping that I could fix the sound. The truth is though, this conversation with David Taylor-Klaus was really amazing and very valuable. So I'm releasing it as is because the insights matter more than my audio quality. Thank you for your patience, and let's get into it. We welcome today for our very first episode, David Taylor-Klaus. He reintroduces successful entrepreneurs and senior executives to their families through coaching. David's clients create the kind of life rhythm that enables them to build profitable businesses, raise thriving families, and live wildly fulfilling lives. A 30-plus year successful serial entrepreneur, David is recognized for combining candor, intelligence, and humor with masterful coaching. He challenges leaders and their teams to reach their highest levels of performance in their professional and personal lives. David has lived with ADHD and depression for most of his life, giving him a deep understanding of and compassion for the neurodivergence that is so common among entrepreneurs and maverick leaders. When David's life work is done, no entrepreneur nor maverick leader will need to experience what he did, standing on the proverbial bridge wondering how they ever got lost. David and his wife Elaine, also a best-selling author and professional coach, are up until COVID empty nesters, now living in the heart of Atlanta with their 2 dogs and an ever-changing array of their 3 children. Their life is rich and full. His best-selling book, Mindset Mondays with DDK, 52 Ways to Rewire Your Thinking and Transform Your Life, is available on Amazon. David, thank you for joining me today.
My pleasure.
Yeah, let's get into it. Let's talk about you and how you got into coaching. How long have you been coaching?
Been at this 17 years now as a professional coach.
And what were you doing before coaching? Because this is your 3rd career, right? So
before coaching, I co-founded and ran a internet strategy and web development company for 14 years. We had launched that in fourth quarter of 95. So we started doing websites at a point when we had to teach people what the internet was so we could sell them a website. So I came from hospitality into technology into professional coaching.
That's a very interesting progression from hospitality into technology and then technology into coaching. What was the impetus for your transition from technology into coaching?
That's an odd story. So about 10 years into, less than 7% of companies in the US ever make it to 10 years. So we were high. We were celebrating. It was phenomenal. We started in, just before the tech boom, and it was amazing. And we thought we were on top of the world. And everything from the outside looked fabulous. Totally living the good life. Married to a woman I had known since I was 11. We had 3 kids in private school, the house, the cars, all the things that looked like the good life. But I realized shortly after that I had really gotten to the point where I was so driven by leading the company I thought I should lead and hiring the people I thought I should hire and leading the way I thought I should lead and all this shoulding all over myself. I was living the should life, but making it look like the good life. And by August of 2005, I realized the only thing I was clear about were the 5 best ways to kill myself. I had gotten completely lost. And that wake-up call was pretty shocking. So the very long story short, I spent the next several years, a lot of therapy, getting a lot of coaching, and really re-anchoring who I was being as a professional. And in that process, became pretty clear that there was something else that I wanted to do. And then in 2008 and 9, we had a global fiscal readjustment, let's say. And what I noticed is when the economy goes sideways and people get scared, a lot of them can start acting in a way that's out of sync with the values we thought they had. And our clients started behaving in a way that was really uncomfortable. And that was the nail in the coffin for me. This is not the industry I want to be in. It's becoming more commoditized. Our clients are freaking out. We're being the brunt of it. No matter how valuable we were with all the digital initiatives that they needed, they're freaking out. So my partner and I started looking at how we wanted to shut down the company and make sure our employees were taken care of and our clients were taken care of. And I knew what I wanted to do. I started coaching in '08, and so I spent the next 5 quarters coaching and leading this company. And my business partner wasn't really clear on what they wanted to do next. And I'm away for a leadership retreat, and I get back, and my partner and I have our regular weekly lunch. And they said to me, "Hey, I figured out what I want to do." I said, "Fantastic." Right? By the way, you can't coach your partner, life partner, or business partner without permission. So, and it's probably not good to coach them anyway.
Yeah.
So I was super supportive. Yay, fantastic. What is it? And they said they wanted to run the company and they wanted to run it without me. I was like, fantastic. So that was just around Halloween, and by December 16th, I was out and full time.
I mean, I totally agree. I think people who can work with their spouses or coach their spouses, that's a really difficult line to walk. And if you can do that, that's amazing. And what you're,
Those are two different animals.
yeah,
Working with your partner and
and
coaching your
coaching your
partner,
partner.
way different. Elaine and I have been working together since 2009.
Hmm.
We don't coach each other, and we're both master certified coaches.
Hmm.
That's why we don't coach each other.
So then your partner, your business partner, took over the job, took over the company, and then you went out full full throttle into your coaching business. And when you went out to do that full time, what was that experience like? Was it everything you imagined, or was it?
That's such a fascinating question. I'm trying to think as to whether I actually imagined what it might be. I was so excited to dive into it, I dove in, which entrepreneurs do all the time.
Mhm.
And at the beginning, I think what challenged the launch, and I want to say it clearly because what although the launch had its challenges, I hit 6 figures within 10 months and have been on an upward trajectory since because I had already been coaching folk, turning my attention from 1 foot in, 1 foot out to both feet in was an easier transition. I'm a
Mhm.
huge fan of coaches entering this profession or people becoming trained certified professional coaches of being a funded startup.
Mhm.
It is very hard when you're stained by scarcity. In other words, you jump out of one job and you don't have a nest egg or run rate to start a new profession. It's always better to do it with other people's money. So if you're getting a paycheck from somewhere else while you're building the beginnings of your coaching practice, that's a funded startup. You've got money that's allowing you to survive while you're building the startup. And I think too many folks think, oh, well, I have to go do this full time from zero. Ooh, that takes a certain fortitude and bank account to be able to do that and do it well
Right.
because scarcity will change the way you speak to your market and your individual prospective clients. And that can stain the conversation. We can talk more about that later. That makes it challenging. I had the benefit of my other company.
Mhm.
So going into it full time, my challenge was that I thought that I should be hired either as a life coach or a business coach. Spoiler alert, you can't coach half a person, period. And because of the stigma with life coaching, like you say, I'm a life coach, people go, oh, drum circles and loincloths in the woods on the weekend and candles and sandals. And all coaching is life coaching because if you want to get better at tennis, you hire a tennis coach. If you want to get better at anything that is a part of your life, leadership, relationships, you name it, that's all life. So Call it what you want. Underneath it, it's fundamentally all life coaching, right? So I spent my first year either life coaching or business coaching.
Mhm.
Very difficult because patterns that show up in one place show up in the other. Successes in one can map over to the other. And when you or the client is trying to keep a firewall, it's very hard. So I stopped that after a year, and the acceleration became much greater because
Mhm.
I was coaching the whole human.
Right. And that's a really good like metaphor because well not metaphor, but that's a really good way to put it because honestly, like most of the time we kind of just try to focus on the business side of it or leadership side of a person, but as you said, you cannot take that the life part of them out of it. They're like relationships and business and working with people. It's part of life.
Hey, we've got some good stuff coming up in just a sec. But real quick, if you haven't subscribed yet, now's the time. I share these conversations to help you build a real business as a coach, and I don't want you to miss the next one.
And so, yeah, as you're saying, you can't just coach for professionalism or for leadership. You really have to work on the person.
Look, and there are coaches that get hired as, say, work with a client on leadership presence.
Mhm.
When you're working with somebody's presence, the way they show up as a leader, the way they move through their day as a leader, the way they connect and communicate and lead other people, it's going to touch everything that's underneath.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're just teaching them to perform, right? There are professional speaking coaches, and many of them will just deal with how you say what you say, when you say it, how you move your body. In other words, the performative elements of it.
Mm.
But in order for the change to be meaningful, lasting, you need to go underneath. What has been the obstacle to it? What will make it embed? What will make it more powerful? Because otherwise, you're just teaching them the performative elements of it.
Mhm.
And the beautiful thing about coaching is it is, when done well, something that can create meaningful, deep, lasting change.
Mm.
Because we're not just working with the actions, changing actions to get different results. We're working with the thoughts and the beliefs and the feelings and the identity that underlie those actions. And the deeper you go, the more meaningful and more lasting the change is. Always.
That's good. That's so good because yeah, sometimes we just get stuck on, especially when you're really focused in the business side of things, you get stuck on let's just focus on these KPIs. But we're not walking KPIs, right? We are thinking, feeling people who have stuff going on in our lives, stuff happening at work and stuff happening in home. And so it's, that's a really great way to explain it and help to frame coaching. Yeah, so I actually I really wanted to dive in because you said in the first 10 months you hit six figures, correct? And now that's really very impressive. How did you get there? How did you do that? Because there are a few who I've met that have done that, but 10 months is still a very short period of time to do that.
Look, just before COVID, the average income for an executive coach was 57,600 a year, and life coach was 20,000 lower. And the reason is that I think, speaking specifically to what your podcast is about, people don't create systems; they're buying themselves a job instead of becoming an entrepreneur. And so that lack of system, that lack of structure, that lack of design is a killer. And so for me, one thing I know is that a business like this lives and dies on conversations. Period. You can't. It's not build it and it will come. You can spend 100 grand on Facebook ads and you'll get over six figures, barely. There are coaches that just sell programs and just sell courses. Yes, you can make money doing that without having the conversations. However, that's still a slog.
Mm.
What makes a coaching business work? We don't sell by design, or to be most effective. Coaching isn't something that you sell, it's something that you enroll people in.
Mm.
The times that I've sold a client into coaching, I've had to drag them kicking and screaming through the entire coaching engagement for them to create the shift in their world that they want to shift, they want to create. My God, when I enroll them in their vision of the future that they wish to create, some of the times I'm holding on while they race forward. So that's what our job is. We are enrolling them in a vision of their vision of a future that they want to create, walking with them while they create it, and keeping them accountable to what's true for them. And this goes for leadership coaching, relationship coaching, pure life coaching, all of it,
Yeah.
every bit of it. If they're not enrolled in what they're trying to create, they're not invested.
Yeah. So they have to have buy-in into what they're trying to do and change, right?
100%. One of the sticky points that happens sometimes in executive coaching, where the company is the sponsor and the client is the coachee,
Hmm.
there are times where that can get sticky because if there's a Fortune 10 company that I coach with that the way they do things is beautiful because it's only available for the 80 officers of the company. And when one of the officers asks for coaching, an internal group presents three of us to as a prospective coach for them. They interview, they select, we go. Not only have they got buy-in because they're the ones seeking coaching, right? First thing that most companies don't do, they say, "Oh, we've got a coach for you."
Hmm.
Second thing is they get to interview coaches to make sure that there's a connection. The single most predictive element for success in a coaching engagement is connection between the coach and the coachee,
Hmm.
period. And the third thing they do, which is unusual and amazing, is the cost of the coaching does not come from some distant HR learning and development budget. It comes from their P&L. Now, granted, for a Fortune 10 company, this leader, their P&L has many, many, many zeros, but it's still something that they see in their budget on their P&L, which means they've got skin in the game, even if it isn't their skin. And all of those are important: buy-in, connection, and investment, skin in the game. Those are three essential elements in corporate coaching, besides confidentiality between coach and coachee. That's another whole conversation. But that's the important piece is you've got to have buy-in. 100% have to have buy-in.
So you've had that situation where you drag somebody into coaching and you didn't have that buy-in?
Where I sold them into the value of it and they got all excited by it, but it wasn't tied to their vision of the future. And I would come off a call sweating because it was so much work. That's the fascinating thing about coaching. As a consultant, when I was a consultant, I'm doing the work, right? I'm doing all the heavy lifting, or the vast majority, right? It's my job to, as the consulting joke always, I've just got to be one page ahead of the client, and then I'm providing value. In coaching, the coach is doing all the work. We're creating the environment for them to work within,
Hmm.
for them to achieve what they want to achieve. If I come across off a call sweating, I'm doing it wrong.
So in that situation where you sold that leader into coaching, what was the experience for you and the result?
Oh, first of all, they were an attorney. And after a while, they literally stopped showing up for sessions and ghosted me
Oh.
until the end of the contract. It was the most bizarre experience. And I understood. I mean, it was the most bizarre experience. I kept the space. The assistant said, keep the space on the calendar. Guy never showed up. He stopped showing up. I gather, I still don't know why that one turned out that way, meaning he was intent on paying off the rest of the contract. It was wildly uncomfortable. It was in my third year of coaching. A bizarre experience. But every experience we have in coaching as coach and coachee can be a learning experience. I'm still working on that one. But what I learned from it first and foremost is we don't sell coaching. We
Hmm.
enroll people into it. That is a requirement.
Yeah. How did you, because that's also a very different perspective on the whole, the whole business of, and I feel like that's what is the biggest hang up for a lot of coaches is once they went from their previous profession and now they have to be a coach, they have to do the marketing and sales, but they don't like doing sales because now they feel icky about doing sales. So how did you make that transition from thinking about like selling somebody and enrolling them?
Remember, I told you that I had been in technology before.
Hmm.
And when you're in an industry super early, look, When I transitioned out of network consulting into, so it was hospitality, network consulting briefly, and then into uh, websites, internet strategy, and web development. We had all these ad agencies and PR firms and Marcom groups that were our clients, and they kept asking about this internet thing. And so we would teach them what the internet was. And they said, now what? We need a website. I'd say, okay, I can build one. And the first client said yes. And I was like, crap, now I have to learn how to code. So I had spent the weekend learning how to code and built them the first website. My partner came in, I left the network consulting and started this technology company, which means I fell backwards into it and it became successful. But I never really sold the first websites.
Hmm.
In that at that early stage, we did websites for our clients who had clients, and then they're asking for sites for them. And then we did a couple higher profile sites here, and then the phone started ringing. It was years before we actually had to start selling, which was an uncomfortable transition because during the late 90s, early 2000s, websites were becoming commoditized, the first wave.
Yeah.
And we had to sell in a way that we hadn't before, and we had to learn how to do that and differentiate.
Hmm.
You can't just rely on the phone ringing. And even 17 years in, you can't rely on the phone ringing. You still have to connect with folks, have conversations, and enroll them in what's possible. That's what we were doing early on in the internet business as well.
Hmm. So then you were the man on the phone, or you were the man going to those meetings, those sales conversations, you were there having those conversations then?
Yeah, that's what my partner and I did the majority of the time was bringing those clients in.
Hmm.
Now, then there's the transition to having your team serve them and you not be the one to serve everybody. That's a bottleneck for most coaches.
Right.
Because if you over enroll your capacity, then you either shift your model or you bring in a bench of coaches because you can't coach everyone. And when I coach an organization, if I'm coaching the CEO and they want coaching for their team, ideally, and in 99% of the situations, I'm going to have somebody else coach the rest of the C suite because the integrity of the relationship is essential. And this is really important for coaches to understand. Yes, it'd be lovely to coach everybody in the C suite, but if even in the back of the COO's mind, she thinks that the agenda of the coaching with her is being driven by what the CEO wants, then that's screwed the field. That's terrible. That's impacted the coaching. And the coaching relationship needs to be clean. So if I'm coaching the CEO and I have a bench of coaches that are coaching the individuals on that leadership team, then that's a clean relationship. So I can't coach if I've got room in my practice for one or two one-to-one clients and the CEO says I want you to coach everybody on the team, I've got to bring other people in.
Right.
And scale is a challenge. If you haven't scaled yourself, you haven't scaled your business.
Right. And when you try to scale without systems and processes, you're you're just in for a world of headache.
You are. And then there's the timing buzzkill. Like, do you build or scale your systems before you have the need for it, or do you try to build and scale the systems as the need is presenting itself? Which is the hardest time. The trick is hire your assistant before you actually need them because onboarding them when you are overloaded and need them the most is the worst time to have to do it because you don't do it as well. And that's true in any situation. You timing your scaling is critical.
Mhm. I feel like for you, because most of the coaches that I know and have met, they're not serial entrepreneurs. They're not,
Hmm.
they're often not the at the C-suite level or the owner founder level, right? They're often more likely middle manager, maybe senior VP, SVP, right? And then they transition from HR, communications, operations, finance into coaching. And so, from what I'm hearing, your experience as an entrepreneur before jumping into coaching, because you were on the sales calls, you realized you knew and you had systems that helped with your ability to be successful so quickly within a year. Is that correct?
I wish that were the case.
Okay. Please correct me.
It'd be beautiful to say, oh, because I had so much experience with systems and building systems for other companies,
Mhm.
boy, wouldn't that be that I started off with all the systems in place? Of course I didn't. It was I got this, right? And there were ripples along the way where I had to go back and do some of the foundational work that, just like almost every entrepreneur, we skip over in the enthusiasm, or as Gerber calls it, the entrepreneurial seizure to get going. We don't build all those systems,
Right.
which is why there is no time in a coaching relationship where going back to do the fundamentals does not serve, right? And whether that's fundamentals of the deep personal work, fundamentals of the performative work, doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Fundamentals always serve. Yitzhak Perlman sits down to practice. He does scales to this day. So it's important to realize that fundamentals don't go away just because you are at a certain level.
Okay.
And I skipped over those.
I see.
So going back and having the internal tracking systems, the internal, I mean, everything.
Mhm.
There were several places where I go back and do that. Now, I have a fundamental belief that best of breed systems are always better than these single monolithic platforms. In fact, there are a lot of situations where people use portions of monolithic platforms, portions of multiple monolithic platforms, and that's still leaning towards best of breed.
Mhm.
There's a way to do it where you integrate the elements that are the best for what you're trying to do. Doing that in the 1990s was a challenge. Doing that now with how fluid systems are and APIs and the ability to bridge systems is amazing. It is amazing. Even if it's just one other outside element to an existing system, make the system work for you. The rule is the system that's the best system is the one that gets used, and the one that gets used is generally the simplest. And I think coaches get caught up in overcomplicating stuff
Yeah.
because a lot of coaches aren't technologists. So, what will this look like when it's easy? I mean, everybody needs to write that down. What will this look like when it's easy? If you're going into any new endeavor, ask that question over and over and over and over and over. Because if it's easy, it'll work. And I don't mean easy as in no effort, I mean easy as in full of ease. It may take a lot of effort. Life generally does. But it can also be filled with a tremendous amount of ease. And that's the goal.
No, I think that's so brilliant, and that's something I really need to take in and apply for my work as well.
Mm-hmm.
Because, well, one, yeah, the approach that I've been taking with my business is very much from tech companies, which is MVP, iterate, 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 right? Because you could build the whole single monolithic system and program, but then you realize my assumptions, which weren't necessarily terrible, in reality, what's going to happen, right? And so,
They were siloed.
yeah,
Yeah.
and so now I have to go back and redo and redevelop a few things, but that's neither here nor there. The point that you're making, though, about what will this look like when it's easy, full of ease, I think that is very important because when I've talked to coaches, especially the ones starting out, there's not a lot of kind of vision for what they're trying to accomplish. They don't know where they're trying to go. They're just trying to do the work. And so that's something that I'm trying to have conversations with coaches about is like we can do the work together, but what are we driving towards? What are you driving towards? What do you want this to look like for yourself and the business you're building, but also for like your again, we are not just business, we are a whole person, and so there's a personal life. So for you as while you're building your business, but also for those your loved ones, what does this business mean to them? Are you going to be just killing yourself doing 40, 60 hours and doing that, or are you trying to build a sustainable system that allows you to, as another coach I was talking to earlier this week said, allows me to, I want to be able to go to the Four Seasons, come home, and not worry about the bill.
Well, and to be fair, there are a lot of coaches that have that treat it like a lifestyle business, meaning that when they stop, it stops.
Hmm.
There are times in our world where I ratchet down the business so there's more stuff that I can handle. There are times where I dial it up. And that's the advantage of having control of a solo led company. Now, there are folks who build it as an exitable entity,
Hmm.
right? Where we are trying to build sustainable systems that can run when I'm no longer part of it. So there's transferable value and multiple and exit. We have one company that's like that and one company that's like this, and that's by design. So if you're building systems for a lifestyle business versus building systems for an ongoing entity that you can exit, very different way of building systems or bringing in systems. It's too often I think coaches are building it. Say, I'm going to make everything I need out of Google Workplace, right? And you don't need to be the technologist. You don't need to be building the systems. You need to be using systems. Go back to Gerber's E-Myth. Stop being the system. You have to, people run the system runs the business.
Right.
And, but you have to be aware of what you're building towards, right?
Hmm.
So why am I doing coaching? Why am I a coach? You have to know your why because people who have a clear why can endure any how. And how becomes easier because you know where you're going. And that, although coaches tend to do that for their clients, it's amazing how few coaches do that for their own business, the entity itself. So yes, you're speaking to a real gap, right? Coach has to know their why and they have to know what the entity is so they know what they're feeding.
Right. It's the physician heal thyself, right? We're so good about seeing things in other people, but we often don't take the time to reflect and look at ourselves in the mirror and think through the same questions we would ask our clients as we should be asking ourselves.
I'm shocked at how many coaches don't have a coach. And I tell people all the time, never hire a coach who doesn't have a coach.
Mhm.
It's a belief I've had from the very beginning. I've had a coach or multiple coaches all the way through. And that's essential. If we believe that coaches help us do better and be better and grow, then why would we not have a coach?
That's a really good point. What's been one of the most rewarding parts of the work that you've been doing with your clients?
That's so interesting. I was thinking something else before I said with your clients.
Well, let's go both.
Look, I mean, the most rewarding piece is time and space to focus on my marriage, to be an active part of my kids' lives, to have them be an active part of our lives, to do the things in our world that we want to do, to anchor our travel around friends and family fun learning as opposed to traveling all over the place for clients at their whim. It's that has been incredibly rewarding, that I am living a wildly fulfilling life and running a profitable business. And that's that's amazing,
Yeah.
right? So that's been incredibly rewarding. Now, from the client work, getting to witness what my clients create and witnessing them celebrating that creation and that fulfillment,
Mhm.
that's outrageous.
Mhm.
I've even told some prospective clients, I am amazingly selfish. I do this work for me because that epiphanous moment when the light bulb goes off for the client, when they have that, oh my God, look at what I've just created, and they get to that celebration point. That's the energy that jazzes me, right? So that's why I do this.
Yeah.
I
I,
think if coaches are honest, when coaches are honest, that's true for a lot of coaches as well. Because if the client's successes didn't light them up, wouldn't be doing this.
mhm.
I'm just honest about it.
I think a lot of coaches get into coaching because of that, because they like helping
Mhm.
people and they want to have more of a purpose with their life. And I mean, for me, I resonate that not as because I don't identify as a coach, right? I don't. My current work is not as a coach. But what I want to do is be impactful in the lives of other people and building a business that leaves legacy and impact for business people and other people in the world. And I want to show that to my kids that we can we can do things, we can be good people, we can do a good job helping people, and we can help them to lift them up so that they can also be successful in whatever endeavors that they're trying to do. And in that, we can make the world better. I think the world is just full of so much negativity and all this other stuff going on in the world, and we need to we should do what we can to try to lift people up and help them. And that's also why I wanted to do this podcast, which is I see a lot of great coaches. I've talked to so many wonderful people, but they can't figure it out. And so they just struggle and struggle and struggle. And in my mind, everything is figure outable, right? And there's at this point, there's such a we're at this like inflection point when it comes to technology where it is so easy and so accessible so that if you have the desire or you have somebody who can help you understand what's possible, then you can bring that technology in, not to, run your life or take over your work, but for you as a coach to use it to augment you to be able to, one, find more people and let them know who you are, but also to help you to help more people. Because the Claude ChatGPT Geminis out there, if you think about it in a perspective of these AI agents can be my assistant to help me be more efficient, to have better understanding, and to find and see insights, you can do so much more efficiently as a coach. I think.
There's so much in what you just said, and I think the foundational element is that everybody is here. This is a fundamental belief of mine. So call it an N of one, okay? That we're all here to create a shift. Entrepreneurs must know what it is in order to be successful. Because if you don't know the shift you're here to create, then you're just faffing about playing at different things and you're challenging your own fulfillment and success. And as an entrepreneur, when you can name the shift that you're trying to create, you have something to work towards. Positive psychology, one of the things that's really essential is shifting the language set to solutions focused instead of problem focused. It's very easy to say what I don't like, what's not working, right? Continuous quality improvement poisoned the culture of business with that. That's the lasting legacy. That we're always looking for what's broken, what's not working well. We're always looking to tweak. And the language tends to be in terms of the problem that we're fixing. Right, our medical model in the United States is centered around that, sadly, as opposed to solutions-focused language, the dream behind the complaint. This is what I'm seeking to manifest, to create, to make different.
Yeah.
And when the language is in solutions-focused, here's what happens to the team. Everybody knows what they're working towards. So often, what would have been considered success when you're looking at it through the problem-focused language, the solution is just the absence of the problem. And what was actually the desired goal that was not articulated across the entire team gets run over without anybody noticing. Solutions-focused language lets everybody know what you're working towards, so you know it when you get there, and you can celebrate the successes along the way. And celebrating successes accelerates the process. So it's incredibly important that we as entrepreneurs know what we're here to create. Otherwise, it's exhausting. And the other piece is there's only so much impact I can make directly in a one-to-one capacity, right? There are only so many people I can touch. So, luckily for me, one of my core values is cascade, right? I expand my footprint by serving those who lead others,
Mm.
right? Otherwise, it feels like a dead end to me. It's not that I can't help other folk. There are plenty of folk. Well, that's clearly my reminder to turn off my ringer. There are plenty of folks who will serve the folks that I can't, don't, or won't. But I focus on serving people who have impact beyond them because that expands my impact footprint. And that's important to me. I want to leave an impact wake that's positive and expansive. So that changes who I elect to focus my service on.
You call it the impact wake. And actually, I wanted to hit on one thing. You said when you celebrate success, it accelerates your trajectory towards your goal. Can you explain that? Because I think that is really
Yeah,
important.
we're simple creatures. We thrive on dopamine. We've I had a sales manager 150 years ago who, whenever we would hit quota or hit our mark or hit our goal, it was great. What's the next goal? And the fact that it was even that much celebration was rare, but it was always check what's next.
Mm,
And that's a killer for culture, for enthusiasm, for buy-in, for excitement. It's just awful. And when we were children, we celebrated everything. Everything. Not peeing on the seat was a dance in the house. I mean, it was crazy. We would celebrate everything. And that gets acculturated out of us,
mm,
socialized out of us, educated out of us. Those three systems, those three forces have gotten culturally most folks, and it's not just North America's poisonous way of doing it, it's a global impact that we look at celebrating the big marks
mm,
and only celebrating those. And when we don't celebrate along the way, wow, is that discouraging? And
mm.
the dopamine cycle isn't coming from the work that we're engaged in. We find the dopamine cycle through the tyranny of the flat glass and any other place we can get it. So that idea of celebrating the small wins along the way keeps us leaning forward and moving and engaged and excited.
Yeah. So how do you implement that into your coaching with your clients?
Lots of ways. One is blatantly, overtly, that we're going to celebrate. God, if I hear one more company say that innovation is part of our DNA, no, it's not, and I can tell you why. If you punish failure instead of rewarding failure, then innovation has nothing is alien to your company. Because we need to celebrate all forward motion.
Hmm.
Because in innovation, a failure, Thomas Edison created 9,999 ways not to make a light bulb. And there's famous stories about him celebrating that, because if I didn't do all of those, I wouldn't have created the light bulb. And that's what innovation looks like, celebrating every move forward. We learn from every rocket that blows up on the launch pad. We learn from everything. So that is what I mean about celebrating forward motion and
Yeah.
celebrating learning and celebrating every small success along the way. So helping my clients identify that, helping them find the places to celebrate, teaching them gratitude practices to bring into their life and even to their family and their team.
Mhm.
EOS, Entrepreneur Operating System, in their level 10 meetings, they talk about opening every one of those meetings with everybody going around and celebrating a success and a personal one, professional one, to get people to be human, to be connected, and to practice celebration. So it's pushing into our culture from coach centric ways
Yeah.
and even some from the therapeutic centric ways to get people to practice celebrating again, because it's really remembering something you used to know instead of learning something new.
I love that. That is, I wonder what happened along the way that got taken out of us because that is, yeah, it's such a simple thing, and we used to do it, but as we grew up and matured, something about the world said,
Oh, make your goals bigger is one force. That's
mhm,
socialization, and acculturation, education, and unfortunately, the faith communities have really done damage through avoiding pride.
mhm,
And although there are really good reasons and foundations in those communities for that to be a force, an attention point, but the unintended impact is terrible. And, you know, leaving that internal desire for and craving for celebration, even celebrating everything your kids do and anything your kids do. I mean, I'm not saying everybody gets a purple ribbon for participation. This is celebrating accomplishments.
yeah,
And that's important. It doesn't mean you're being prideful.
yeah,
So, I mean, look, I think we could do 7 podcast series on how we've lost the art of celebration and the inherent innate ability to celebrate. But I think the short version is acculturation, socialization, educational systems have ground that out of us.
mm,
And it's sad.
yeah. And so you bringing that back to your coaching, you implement that into your coaching with your clients, and it helps to accelerate their ability to grow and change.
For them, for their team, for their families, absolutely. Foundational. There's a point in every coaching engagement where the client, be they a team or an individual, hits an acceleration point. And one of the things that brings that acceleration point earlier and earlier in the engagement is how much they lean into gratitude practices and celebrations.
Mm-hmm.
The more they can weave that in and bring that in and participate in it, even if they're doing it obligatorily at the beginning, it begins to have the impact, and it's astounding how much they accelerate. By the way, that's why I shifted to working longer term with my clients. First, I went to a minimum 6 month, and now for the last decade, it's been more than a decade. It's been a minimum of a 1 year for the first contract with an individual or a team, because everybody needs time to hit acceleration, and it can be a week, a month, 3 months. It depends on how they operate. But once they hit acceleration, oh boy, then
Mm,
it's like, all right, let's go.
right. I I can tell that coaching people just excites you at a different level, and I love that because I think when you're doing the thing that you enjoy, it should definitely, when you talk about it, it should be exciting. It should be fun. And I feel like the common feeling for most people who go to work is Monday morning, oh, I gotta drag myself out of bed and get to work. And you, on the other hand, because you're doing something so meaningful and so impactful for people, just have an energy that when you get into work, you're just super energized by it.
If that were the case for everybody, it would be magnificent, and it's not. On one hand, that's great for us because as coaches, that means our business is never going away. But to be less predatory, ideally, people would be moving through their entire life lit up. And let's be real, that's not what everybody gets to do. And even the people who feel that with their work don't feel that all the time, every day about everything. And if they do, I want whatever drugs they're taking. So I mean that's the goal in life, is to be that engaged and enlivened.
Yeah.
Mark Silverman wrote a book called Only Tens, meaning that when everything in your life is a 10 out of 10 and you've purged everything else, that's nirvana. And how functional and how reasonable is that? How, that utopia? I don't know, but it's certainly an admirable thing to work towards, right? So if you're describing your work, your marriage, your life, your anything, and it's all terms that have to do with battle or war, slogging through, dude, there's something wrong and something for you to look at and work on.
Mhm. I wonder how many coaches feel like even 50% of their time feel excited about the work that they do.
Dude, I do not feel excited about finances or accounting, right? That's not something that lights me up. So it's
Yeah.
something I do in the morning when the brain is really on, right? And it's something that I hire people to help me with. And, my wife and I, all four of our companies, we have people helping us with the bookkeeping and the financing. Elaine hired our bookkeeper before she had her first client, right? We know that it's a weakness, so it's a zone of incompetence. So we hire people to do that for us. Yet we have to know enough to be able to understand it, management, and lead it. We don't have to do it. So, no, does it excite me? No,
Mm.
right? But I like what I like what having that handle does for my business and my life. So I'm willing to put the effort into it. And that's okay. No entrepreneur is going to love every aspect of what it means to be an entrepreneur. Okay, hire.
Yeah. I just want to go into a little bit more on your coaching practice and methodologies that you apply with your clients. Because we're talking about gratitude, we're talking about celebrating success. So that's one thing that you implement into your coaching. What else do you implement into your coaching to help you when you're working with your clients?
So that's sort of a foundational question of coaching.
Mhm.
I don't have a curriculum based coaching program where we always do these things. There are elements that I do for everyone because it sets the foundation of the coaching. So In that line, everyone that I do one-to-one coaching with, we start with a discovery intensive. And for me, that's turned into a 4-hour first session where we create a bunch of the tools that we're going to use throughout the arc of the coaching, including beginning to narrow it to isolate down their focal points, the big bucket issues they want to work on throughout the arc of the engagement. My job throughout the coaching is, what do you want to work on today? What do you want to play with today? What do you want coaching around? And in each session, my job is to tie what we're working on, what we're playing with on that session, to those focal points. Sometimes it's blatantly obvious. Sometimes they don't see the connection, but we work with the issue at hand. My job is to keep this in mind all the way along. The clients that have been working with me for 2, 3, even 10 years, we're not working on the same focal points we were at the beginning. Those focal points morph and change and come off and add on, right? If I'm working on the same focal points at the end of the first year that we were at the beginning, neither one of us are doing our job.
Right.
Right. My job is to eventually coach myself out of a job, meaning either those focal points are resolved and we pick new ones, or we've done that, we're done.
Right.
Right. This is not a therapist where you're going to be on my couch every Thursday for an hour until you're dead, talking about what your mom said that's making life hard today. Right. That's, by the way, I was a psych major. I mean, no disrespect. That's humor. But it is effectively to work them through. So that discovery intensive is fundamental. And one of the things we do is we do a values clarification. Mm-hmm. And there are lots of tools there, and I've used a ton of them. So many of them have you working from a list of words that you want to pull at some stage in it, pulling from a list of words. Those values clarifications become aspirational. Mm-hmm. Ooh, I should have that value. I want that value. I keep my values in front of me. All of my clients do, because they're created in the client's language. Like one of my core values I told you was about impact footprint. I call it cascade. Mm-hmm. My value around life and learning, I call sponge, right? And my wife and I developed a methodology for doing these values clarifications that create these really deep, passionately invested documents that our clients know what their values are and the words that make up those values. So that at any point during the work we do together, or as they walk through their life with or without us, they can look at something that's going well and say, wow, what values are being honored here? What values are at play, right? This is why it feels as good as it does. If there's conflict or upset, ooh, what values are at play here? What values are being dishonored? Where's the values gap in this situation? It can help them choose which way to move. Because when your values are clear, decision-making becomes easier. And that's an essential piece of leadership. And that even being a leader in your own life, forget community, company, family, you name it. You're a leader in your own life first. So my clients always learn how to use their values as a lens for living, loving, decision-making, leading, you name it. So those are the types of things that we work on from the very beginning. So when the values are here, we know who they are. Focal points tell us where they want to be. And then my job is to help them build that action plan in between. Mm-hmm. And then help them hold themselves accountable to who they are at their core. Because Jim wrote this years ago that there's nothing worse than getting to the top of the ladder and finding out you had the ladder against the wrong wall. And so keeping people accountable to who they are, they really are, helps them not do what I did, was having my ladder against the wrong wall.
That's it for today's episode. I hope you grabbed something useful you can actually apply in your business. If you did, leave a comment or share it with a friend, and hit subscribe if you haven't already. I'll catch you next week.